Friends, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Another edition of Live at Night Soccer Talk. I'm Alex Parra. It's always great to be with you. I've lost track of time. I've lost track of space in so many ways. I believe this is a Friday evening. I believe this is our 30th or the 30th day of this tournament. It's just been going on and on. Today we had another quarterfinal match, which we will be talking about, of course. So a lot to get to. We appreciate all you that are following us via Deportes Nation Facebook, Deportes Nation X, and Deportes Nation YouTube channel. By the way, we started a chat on there, so if you have questions or comments, beep, beep, boop, beep, beep. That's my typing noise, by the way, in case you didn't know. Please make sure that you join us, that you're a part of it. This is a funky ball, right? Because of the studio and the lights. Trionda, the official ball of this 2026 World Cup. Shared custody, if you will. Co-hosted by Canada, United States, and Mexico. Normally, I would tell you who won, but I've yet to figure that out. Although today, we're certainly getting a little bit closer. So a lot to talk about. Thanks to all of you that are joining us. We appreciate it, whether you're on the X. And by the way, on the Friday evening, hopefully you're having a good end of your work week and getting ready for the weekend. Although, you know, many of us work throughout the week. It's no longer this 9 to 5 Monday through Friday world. But we'll talk about that and other things. Tonight, I am joined by the one and only, there you see him. He looks good today, finally. Victor Araiza. Victor.
That's an improvement.
Yes. It's better than the way I'm looking every day, not better. Victor, it's great to talk to you. Happy post birthday. We're still celebrating. It's a month-long celebration in July. So forget that 4th of July stuff. It's Victor's birthday month. That's the way I look at it from now on. So Victor, how are you this evening?
Doing well. Certainly with that introduction. Happy to celebrate, especially with anybody else who celebrates in July.
Yeah.
And obviously we're getting down to the last teams in the World Cup, which now we got one semifinal etched in stone. We'll see what the other one leaves tomorrow.
Amazing that we're already there. In many ways, Victor, and you alluded to this when we were having 4 games per day. Be careful what you wish for, because soon it'll be going away. I'm almost getting sad, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I'm missing it. Although, and we'll talk about this before the end of the evening, as early as tomorrow, I'm proud to be broadcasting Houston Dynamo International Friendly against Club Olimpia Deportivo from Honduras. So we're kind of back into the mode of maybe the MLS Domestic League and other matches. Not quite the same, and I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's just the attention and focus, the energy of the World Cup, Victor, really, I think is unique, second to none.
Yeah, and again, what's going to be the fallout, not just for the national teams, but for soccer in the United States? What effect will it have on some of these leagues? Obviously, MLS is the top of the food chain. In men's soccer, the NWSL has games going on already. Liga MX starts next week. Then we'll have the European leagues and obviously the USL Championship in the US lower division. So we'll see if there's some trickle down to some of these other leagues, and if there's people that come out to the sport for the first time, or how they continue growing the game. Because again, I think this was a once in a lifetime opportunity because of where it comes in our generation, and a World Cup in the United States, Mexico, and Canada in North America. And we'll see how the biggest sport in the world, or the biggest tournament in the world, affects the sport here in these 3 leagues.
And I think we're already starting to see some of that, Victor. You know, the postmortem, I like to call it, of the USA in particular losing. There's still a lot of interest. There's still a lot of energy behind that. But does that now translate? How does it translate? I'm seeing a lot of conversations on social media and elsewhere about the youth system and the pay-to-play system. So we'll have all these conversations. I think in general, as long as we're getting the conversation, Victor, as long as we're having these words between us, It's a good thing. Again, my concern is that we went from all in, and I don't mean all in support, but so much coverage, so many games, to kind of not so much. How do all of us deal with that? Us that are fans, us that are followers, those that are casual fans, and the sports culture in this country in general. And we talked yesterday with Enrique Vasquez about those things. We want to hear from you, by the way. So we started a chat on YouTube. If you have any questions or comments, send them your way. We are live. Obviously, if you're watching this later, I don't know how we interact. So someone's going to have to help me with all of those little details. Victor, why don't we start today with the match we've kind of already discussed? And in general terms, again, another semifinalist has booked their ticket here at this World Cup, but España finding a way to defeat Belgium.
Yeah, and I think it was probably most people's results. Again, to me, a bit of a bummer because this could have been the U.S.
Yeah.
Probably should have been the U.S. in this game, and you know, even if the U.S. had been eliminated today, I think it would have had a further effect of where soccer went in this country. You know, Belgium, it was even here for most of this game. You have to give them credit, 1-1, and it looked like it was kind of maybe going to extra time, as we've seen a lot of these matches go. But Spain doing enough to resolve it before time was up, and you know, they go through in full time, and I think it certainly sets up a very intriguing France versus Spain match in the semifinal, which we talked about this last night. They faced off in the semifinal 2 years ago of the European Championship, which Spain eventually went on to win.
Yeah,
different teams, different rosters, and obviously that's going to give us a different narrative for this particular match. But I think, again, the way some of these matchups have ended up have just given us tremendous, you know, matchups in for lack of another word, right? Being a little redundant there, but you know, again, France, Spain, I don't think it could get any better than that. Some people may consider it as the final, depending on how
I agree.
it ends up being. And we're gonna get to see it here. That'll be the last game in Texas. That'll be up in Dallas. That'll be the last World Cup game out of the batch that we got between the two Texas cities. And it's gonna be a hot ticket.
Yeah, 9 and 7, right? 7 hosted in Houston, 9 up in Dallas. Am I right?
9 up in Dallas. Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, think about that. I know my math here. That's 16 total in Texas. That's a first, if you will, for combined. Of course, there were some games in the '94 World Cup hosted at the Cotton Bowl. Look, clearly, two powerhouses will be meeting in that semifinal: France and Spain. Spain, after defeating Belgium today, it was, from my perspective, at times well controlled by Spain, but then there were moments where Belgium, you know, they have all the ingredients as well. I'm a little sad for them. I really wish, like you said, it would have been the United States there, winning or losing. That would have meant just so much for the sport in this country, and going up against España. I think at that point it would be, look, playing with house money. I think the team fell one game short of just having a really good run. And now you're seeing the criticism. You're reading everything about Pulisic, his injury, and should people be nicer to him in the criticism because of the injury. So there's a lot of storylines going on here. Victor, we'll talk, of course, about the other quarterfinal here. But man, I'm excited about that Norway-England match. That's very intriguing to me tomorrow. And to be honest with you, the only upset here would be Switzerland, right? If Switzerland were to upset Argentina, that would be potentially monumental. And you mentioned this last night. How much more luck, how many more lives do Messi and Argentina have after really pushing their limit in the last two matches? Maybe that luck runs out, and this could be the Swiss coup to get, first time ever, I believe, to a semifinal. So how do you see those two matches coming up tomorrow?
Well, certainly, I think a lot of people will be glued to their TVs and at these watch parties, and I think maybe a little bit more. Um, I'm trying to find a better word than exciting, because again, I think, again, today, Spain, Belgium was probably a tighter affair than maybe people would have thought. I mean, there were opportunities, but um, and certainly two familiar foes. In this case, I think even though it's two European teams, Norway is a very dangerous team because it's again, I think they're playing with house money now. They
Yeah.
they got nothing to lose. They probably have arguably the best player in the tournament and maybe even the world, depending on where you rank Erling Haaland. It's certainly again it brings a different perspective from what people normally see with Manchester City. Right here, he is in a different situation. Also because he's not in the um, I'll say maybe hated position of being on a super team like Manchester City. More people have been endeared to what Norway is doing. They're kind of the dark horse, but also underdog story that I think people are latching onto more so than maybe it's Switzerland, right? I think if Switzerland manages to um, pull the upset tomorrow, I think people will jump on that bandwagon. But certainly people are on board with Norway and certainly a lot of Mexicans too, right? Because I think Holland has endeared himself with pretty much every crowd. But there was a video that went viral, more so because of the comment. The rowing, right? A bunch of kids in Mexico, I think, were doing the rowing, and Holland came in there and commented, and that probably made their day. But a lot of people were saying, yeah, Norway's the last Latino team left for however you want to, take that. Not a lot of people, not a lot of Latinos maybe jumping on the bandwagon for Argentina, but they're certainly backing Norway.
I think many of us are, to be honest with you. Look, my logical pick to me is still France, and I had to commit to that a few days ago when I was talking to Nick Griffin on Fox 26. I said, look, I think all the way would be France. If I bet on it, the only thing I play is the lotto, right? When it gets to $1 billion, just in case. That way we can buy a nicer set for all of us. Yeah, I think right now what's the word I'm looking for, Victor? Here, my emotional response would be for me to go with the underdog, either Switzerland, and in many ways maybe Norway's not an underdog, but those two, and they're also maybe not the usual suspects, right? I think regardless of the winner, who continues on to the semifinal of Norway and England, that there's going to be some magic there with that team, right? Somebody different in many ways. At least that's my perspective on it, right? For England,
yeah, there's a story for everybody, and certainly, look, France, they're the super team. They're probably the odds favorite for everybody, but that's a country that still only has 2 World Cup trophies.
But yeah, relative compared to Brazil and Argentina,
and to their success all time, right? I mean, I think I was thinking about that. You kind of here in the last few days or a few weeks, should they probably have more? With all the players that have come through that national team, to the success they've had. Again, up until 2018, they only had the one trophy, and that's the one they had at home in 1998. 2018, and then obviously they got to the final and lost to Argentina in 2022. But again, with all the stars that they have, it has to be a failure if they don't win this one. I think it almost kind of has to be cemented that way. But in Spain, maybe doesn't look as strong as we thought they would. Yamal is maybe not being the breakout star like he was in the Euro. But again, today they get a result. They continue to push forward, and I think they've had a solid defense as well.
I'm glad you segued back to the Spain-Belgium match. I was watching with some people, and the comments were, You know, Alex, I may not know the intricacies of the sport, but that's kind of boring, wasn't it? And relative to matches with a lot of goals, relative to the emotion of watching Belgium, United States, for instance, watching the 0-2 comeback for Argentina, this was more of a workman's type match, not sexy, exciting in that sense that you were overwhelmed with, oh, look who's winning. Where I'm going with that comment, Victor, is that, yeah, people can now see often a final, it may not even be the most attractive match of a tournament. And it sets the casual fan, maybe all fans, for kind of a letdown to say, okay, look who made it to the final. Let's say it's France versus Argentina again, for instance, and France wins 1-0 in a late goal based on a mistake where possession was somewhat even. That yes, there are amazing matches that are 0-0. You and I know this, but does that, for the casual fan, maybe set back the sport to say, man, that Curaçao, that Cape Verde, that those teams were so exciting because they had maybe nothing to lose, but this final was just so much of a chess match that it's boring.
Well, and that's what these matches are going to be also, because it's so much
Yeah.
on the line. I mean, you're trying to get to win the trophy. You're trying to write your name in history. And if Spain does it, let's say they pull past France and they get to the final and they win it, maybe in the same way they were able to win the Euro. I mean, it's not going to matter how they won it. What's matter is that they got that second star on the
I
jersey.
agree with that. Yeah.
And obviously for their nation, I mean, it's going to be a full-on celebration, full-on party for the next coming weeks and years. So yeah, I think at this point the results matter more so than in that case. And I mean, again, these teams all have talented players, so it's not boring in hindsight maybe to a high-scoring game, but I don't think it's boring as far as some of these individual talents that can give us a single great moment in a World Cup.
Victor, I think as we look at the bracket and the amount of games too that now some of these teams have accumulated, back to what you and I discussed when we first started this coverage 30 years, it seems like years, 30 days ago. This is a marathon. And in a marathon, you're going to have good miles. You're going to have good splits. You're going to have moments where you feel stronger than others. There's going to be, when you hit that wall, how do you get past the wall to finish? I've never ran a full marathon, so I'm going from the observations of others that have lived it. But in a tournament, I've played in different tournaments at different levels. It's not just necessarily how you start; it's how you finish. And along the way, getting through those bad moments where you have a player that's out because of injury, because of cards, when you have an opponent that's maybe superior to you and you just got lucky and found a way. A lot has to come together. I've been part of teams that have won national championships, and it's so many things that have to come together at that moment, at those moments, to lead to a championship. And maybe that is the beauty of it. It's surviving it in so many ways. I think maybe as we get to these matches, we forget and we should remember the road, la strada, I'll use that word in Italian, that gets us to this point.
For sure. And then, when you look at France, maybe that's something you got to wonder is when they face that type of tough moment, which you would think they would have here against Spain, we'll see. Maybe they're just this unbeatable machine, and that would add to their legacy if they go on and win this. But I mean, Spain has been able to hang on. Maybe their turbulent moment, if we call it that, is that 0-0 draw against Cape Verde in their first match, where they, for them, it probably felt like a loss. Obviously, now in hindsight, I think people respect Cape Verde a little bit more than what they did coming into the tournament. It's Spain up until today hadn't conceded a goal. To me, that's remarkable. Those are the kind of little things that, again, because maybe we're just too enamored with goals, which rightly so. I mean, that's how you win games, and Spain has been able to, produce enough of them to get to this far. And
Oh yeah.
uh, you know, Spain in a quarterfinal, which again, hard to replicate in the friendly, even if you invite them to come over here. These are the kinds of things that would have advanced more of our sport, certainly for our national teams. But I think, and look, the other question about this is how many people have dropped off and stopped watching the World Cup because, you know,
Good point.
they don't have a stake in the fight because, or in the race, because the U.S. are out, Mexico are out. Um, you know, but I think for the avid watchers here in the U.S. and certainly for those around the world, there's plenty of eyeballs on these games, and there's going to be plenty of eyeballs on that France Spain semifinal.
Absolutely, there will. We're talking about this being a marathon, Victor, and we'll get back to the watch parties because I have a question about that. You see already the matches that have built up. 6 matches, not starting too well, Spain, but they're peaking at just the right time, getting through the results that are important. You know, the miles start accumulating, the kilometers start adding up, the pain, the logistics. There's so many things. Where I'm going with this is, I think as a manager, I was watching the end of a documentary about the '94 U.S. Men's national team and their victory 2-1 over Colombia in at the Rose Bowl, and they were talking about Bora Milutinovic and how the players really bonded and followed him. Being a manager, it's also changed because now you have staffs of literally 10, 15, 20 people watching everything. We discussed this early on in our coverage. But Victor, being a manager is often even less about the X's and O's than it is about, hey, I've been there. Let me tell you what happened last time this happened. We were into our third game. It's the psychology of it, right? There's no time for these teams to really train per se. You can't have hard days anymore. You have recovery days. You have days where you're just doing light stretching and movement to keep active. You're not changing the script too much, Victor. It's routine, and it's also giving your team a confidence. And each player is different. There's so much psychologically is where I'm going with this, to this marathon, that those are the teams that are strongest in that regard to me are the teams that find a way to win, where it's coming together, yes, on the field, but the preparation behind and the camaraderie and that leadership is so important via a coach, and now I must say a staff, right?
For sure. And again, just to add to it, long seasons for a lot of these players, probably more work than they've ever been. And of course, that also comes with a nice pay that hasn't been there ever before. And certainly, this World Cup has had its share of you know, better bonuses for these players. So there's some economic incentive there as well. I mean, we're not forgetting that. For
Sure.
as much as it's you know, breaking all these records, it's also going to have higher rewards, and that's why you haven't heard any complaining from any of the players or coaches, because there's a nice reward for them on top of also the prestige that it means to win a World Cup. But yeah, all these things you just mentioned, all that stuff comes packaged in. There's a reason also why I think no foreign manager has ever won the World Cup. I believe, right? You know, unless I'm incorrect on that stat, but I think you know, so there's something to that as well, because it is a lot of we talked about it. It's not just the sport on the field. It's also the cultural impact of what the World Cup means.
And Victor, as a manager, and we see this in press conferences. I see this, and I've seen this with, for instance, Argentina and Maradona. It was that group against the world, literally against the press, against the opponents, against FIFA itself. It's a very what's the word? Other than the supporters and the country you're playing for, everyone else is against you, and you almost have to have that mentality in protecting your group, your brothers in this case, in this battle. I'm using those words intentionally because maybe that's the way to frame this. This is us against everyone. Look at England going to Mexico City and the secrecy of it. Look at the security of it. Look at it. We're not going to trust. Nobody's drinking a bottle of water that hasn't been vetted. Nobody's going to eat a meal that hasn't been brought in on our jet.
Well, that's the other one. It's more, it's certainly a different game from what it used to be in the first couple of editions. It's way more, very meticulous, like you just mentioned.
Sophisticated, and the preparation is so important. And I come full circle with this comment, Victor, because it's not just anymore. Again, 30 days into the tournament, we're looking at Spain, who today beat Belgium, and they're going through to the semifinals. It's a lot of different pieces that have to come together, and I believe part of the analysis is not only what they're doing on the field, but what keeps them on the field, from a physical point of view, from a logistical point of view, and also from a mental point of view. I think that piece of it is really, really important. Victor, let's switch gears. Tomorrow we have two matches. We've talked a little bit about Norway, England. How do you see Argentina, Switzerland, and Kansas City? And I was watching a report today on Fox about Kansas City and about how Kansas City is getting rave reviews about not only their hosting, but also kind of being middle America, and how many journalists from outside the United States, how many tourists are saying, you know what, I know the coasts. I've been to LA, I've been to San Francisco, I've been to New York, New Jersey, I've been to Miami, but this is real middle America. This is the real United States. And the report I saw was very positive about that experience.
Yeah, and that's part of having the World Cup, of being a host city, of opening your doors up to the world, and having the rest of the world kind of get this impression of you. That's also what was at stake here for Houston, if we want to localize it, and
Sure.
some of these other cities that maybe don't have as much, like you said, the notoriety of a New York City, or a Los Angeles, a Mexico City even. That's why, to me, it was still, I don't want to get into how much of the opportunity was missed here with Houston, but I think I do think that more could have been done in that regard. And in Kansas City, I think maybe it's showing they probably had the best plan out of all the cities. And again, New York didn't have to do much. LA didn't have to do much, like some of these other cities. But I think certainly Kansas City has had a plan. They got all these host teams there, right? Like England, Argentina, the Netherlands, and then even Algeria in nearby Lawrence, Kansas. So, and listen, they benefited off of Chicago not being part of this World Cup. So all these things, and we'll see what happens too with Sporting Kansas City. I know they're trying to rebuild that team, which has historically been one of the better run operations in MLS, but lately not that well run. They got to get back to, if they're long away from being an MLS Cup contender, is what I'm trying to say without mincing too many words. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Kansas City, the women's team in the NWSL, the current,
yeah.
They've shined these last couple of years. This was an opportunity for them also, because their facility was one of the host facilities for some of these teams. I think they knew what they were going after. That's been also a market that's been a hot soccer market in the United States. I mean, we talk about the Seattles and the Portlands, but I think Kansas City probably deserves to be in that
How
conversation as well.
how does that? And I'm glad you're talking about this, Victor. How does the reputation aspect of it now applied to Texas? And we know we were just talking about this, right, when we started the broadcast tonight. 16 total games, right, were hosted, split between Dallas and Houston. I think many people who have traveled to the United States know that both of these cities are world-class cities when it comes to everything, to cuisine, to culture, to music, to everything.
Yeah,
Um,
but Dallas is a little bit more posh. It's a little bit more outspoken. There's a bravado that comes with Dallas, Texas, and the Metroplex, and they certainly love to be
Rub it in the
braggadocious.
face of Houston, right?
Yeah, the big oil city, what have you. Um, but with Houston, I think, and I think that's the difference between Dallas and Houston, where Houston's been a little bit more. Um, I could use the word humble, but more also soft spoken. I don't think we necessarily beat our chest as much for our city as much as we should. Um, and I mean this in the eyes of the world, right? And I don't mean this in being arrogant about who we are, but I do think Houston is a little bit silent sometimes about what we have to offer.
Yeah.
We're as good a city as anybody. We got, I mean, probably what, fourth largest city, maybe third now in population. And again, doesn't get mentioned alongside the New Yorks or the LAs. Even again, Dallas is automatically the first reference as a better media market. Even I think sometimes um, has to do with a lot of things, but I think a lot of it has to do with just the way people are down here. Maybe that's not in the personality, but that's why in a moment like this, I would have liked to have seen the leaders of the city.
Step up more?
Some of them, well, yeah, and certainly because a lot of them they're not Houstonians anyway, so they don't have to. They don't share those qualities. They that's part of their expertise, I guess you could say, that they like to beat their chest about what they do for soccer in this city and all the events they put together and how it knocks it out of the park and pat themselves on the back. This was the moment for all that to come forward and really put Houston in a shining light. I mean, I go back to it. I don't know how much of our local soccer community, how much the spotlight was put on them. Um, I think worldwide you got a lot of love for NRG Stadium, and that was great to see, and that was a bit of an eye opener. But that was organic. That was not, something that was planned. It was just a nice effect off the World Cup. So we'll see. Where does Houston go from here? I don't know if they're in Super Bowl picture as far as hosting. I'm sure we'll get another Final Four eventually or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think this was a big event, certainly with in the world impact, and we know the type of soccer city Houston is. Again, hopefully locally, um, not just the people in our sport, but just the people in our city see what uh, media, different industries was an eye opener for them. But again, well, our big question is what's going to be left afterwards, and is this just going to be a passing moment, or is it going to be an actual legacy that gets built here? Because of the World Cup.
No, and Victor, I think that's a legitimate question about the legacy, about what happens next relative to all of it: the youth side, the facilities, the return, the prestige, the reputation of Houston as a world-class city. Look, I see only more positive than negative in regards to that answer. So I don't really see us having to worry about, oh no, we embarrassed ourselves in the eyes of the world. Oh no, people will think differently or less of Houston. Could things have been done better? I guess the answer is always could be done better. I think one thing that will certainly be tested almost right away, Victor, is going to be the continuing support for the matches that are left in FanFest, for instance. There's 2 matches tomorrow. I'll be around there because we're going to be at Shell Energy broadcasting the match, the international friendly with the Dynamo and Olimpia from Honduras. So that'll be interesting to see if the FanFest continues to get sold out, to be full, and for the actual final, if the interest is still there. So that's one way to gauge it. There's going to be many different other ways to gauge it, and how it affects our community. We spoke earlier, a few days ago, Victor, about the World Cup host committee already preparing a legacy piece with local youth clubs and facilities and making the game more accessible. Of course, we'll have to see how well that comes together, how true it is, and how many kids and families it does help. So there are many pieces of that. At the end of the day, I think we in Houston put on a really good show, and we as too many people. I was in part of it in that sense. But also, I know there's also an underlying current in Houston with many people, Victor, that were here before the World Cup and before the current batch of people leading soccer. And I know that's hit a nerve with the soccer community. Oh, look at all these other people that came decades before this World Cup. And how do you honor them? How do you reflect back on their work? Many of them pioneers of the sport. I think their success, our success, the success, Victor, this is our sport, is what I'm trying to say. It's not just one group's. There's so many of us that can feel ownership to this, and in a positive way, without pointing fingers in a negative way. I don't know if you see it that way, or you see others that see it that way. I have talked to some people that have said, you know what, this is not my World Cup. This is not my Houston soccer. You forgot all about us, whoever you are. I sense that, but why can't we be involved in that, and even if it's in a small way, in participating and enjoying it, Victor? I've gone long on setting up the question.
No, I think you saw that. I think you saw that in some of this, in everything going all around town. I think you saw people trying to make it grab a piece of the World Cup, be part of it. Certainly, I think like the watch parties at Shell, certainly the Mexico ones were piece of that. Were like, well, you couldn't get into the Fan Fest, but you know what? Here's a separate environment. There's people that probably didn't even make it into town, that stayed in their surrounding areas, whether that be the Woodlands, Pearland, Channelview, Katy, any corner of Houston that made it their own. Jersey Village or Missouri City,
Sugarland,
Humble, all these smaller towns that maybe they didn't come into town for the Fan Fest, or maybe they only came in once, but in their own communities they celebrated the sport. Not to say in their own leagues. I think we've seen through social media, certainly a lot of people post how they've tried to make it their own World Cup. But I would have liked to have seen more also, because, I bumped into something the other day, might have been yesterday actually, and I actually meant to send it to you, because I've told you, I tried looking for history of the sport. I got back as far as the 1930s. I saw something of a Chicano team as far back as the 1920s in Houston. And that's so those amazing. Are the things that I wish, because these are generations that aren't with us anymore. That's where I wish more would have been done, certainly at the powers that be that have that privileged position to shine the light on all of this. Because again, I think all of this is what's led to this one moment in Houston. It's not just the last 4 or 6 years or 8 years or however long it's been from when the bid got placed to get the World Cup. It's been years of soccer growing the sport, all the way to, I would say, the founding years of Houston, Texas.
I agree, Victor. And what I found out a little bit in the historical piece of this is that because of the port of Galveston, that the sport went back to immigrants and or sailors. that were playing out of Galveston and out of Houston in the early 1900s. And yes, there's a long and rich history. Maybe not on the professional side. If you go back to the old NASL days, where yes, there was a team, believe it or not, the Houston Hurricane, if I'm not mistaken, playing in the NASL, playing in the Astrodome. That's where they would have games. Of course, then came teams like the Houston Hotshots.
Pelé visited the city, you know,
did?
and there was no mention of it from anybody.
Victor, I was at that stadium with, it was a U.S. men's national team friendly. I forget who the team played against. Pelé showed up in a limousine. There were maybe 3,000 to 5,000 people there. It was amazing that we had, I think it was Butler Stadium, if I'm not mistaken, but we were literally able to walk around, talk to the U.S. men's national team players who, there was no security, there was literally no media, but Pelé showed up in this limousine. I think he was wearing a white suit, if I remember correctly, or maybe that's the way I remember it. This was the early 90s. So it wasn't even that long ago. And it was a bleep on the radar. It just hey, arguably the GOAT of this sport in Houston, and there was no promotion, there was no media coverage, but times have changed. And my point is, Victor, things have improved. And I think we are building a soccer culture, a soccer history. I would like one of the pieces, Victor, of what's next, to create a soccer Hall of Fame in many ways. I know that Glenn Davis has been an advocate of this for years. And Glenn, to me, should be in that Hall of Fame, by the way. He's been an advocate of the sport, a supporter of the sport, a key
member.
Yeah.
You know, not to cut you off, but just in like the Houston Sports Hall of Fame. I mean, and I'm just speaking for myself here. The influence of soccer in some of these awards, I think it's almost little to none. And,
agreed.
You know, we can just start there. Or again, you know, should we have a museum in town? I mean, is that something that would fall on the Dynamo and Dash? I mean, I think even just for Dynamo and Dash history, there should be a museum. You know, they got space for it. And you know, I'm not going to get into big details on that now, but I think, you know, there's all these things that could be done for the sport here in Houston. And we'll see if, again, this is the moment that puts that all together, or if it's just one more. And you mentioned this too. We got to do better as media as telling some of this story.
Sure.
And I wish it didn't just fall on 2-3 guys, or 4 or 5. I think that's another reason why I think this World Cup was, you know, where hopefully we'd have all hands on deck, and some of the media partners around town would have shed some light on some of these stories. And that's where,
forgive me, Victor. Let me give you an example of a story that you and I and Enrique Vasquez have been talking about literally for decades. And I saw a posting here. I believe it was our friend from Channel 11 who, is it Luis Ortiz?
Yep.
Luis Ortiz, who said, I cannot believe that the University of Houston doesn't have a men's soccer team, a Div 1 men's soccer team.
Neither does Rice, who supported the World Cup bid.
It's an outrage. I've been talking about this since I was going to school there, Victor, many years ago. And it is incredible that the University of Houston, our university, does not have the wisdom, the interest in making a men's team that, to me, you could recruit only out of the city of Houston, and you would have a competitive situation throughout the United States. And I've asked previous athletic directors, and they talk about Title IX, and they talk about how difficult and expensive it is. To me, it's just excuses, because they're not soccer people, because they've never seen it, because they don't understand the culture. It's not in their interest. They want American football, and they want basketball, and there's legacy there, at least for both. I'm not under playing the role of those sports, but finally somebody else is saying they don't have a men's team here. So maybe it's that kind of culture and pressure that needs to come to change things. So that's one example, Victor, of what can change.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, and I wish, and that's where I was just going to say, that's where it would, at least just comparing between Houston and Dallas. I feel like I've seen more color stories, more features from the media up in Dallas.
Yeah.
Even just interviews on the street or whatever. Going around and some of the visiting tourists that have come into town. That would maybe we missed the mark here. Maybe I missed some of these reports, but I think and the marches were good because I think that's something that just got people down there and. But again, I don't know if there was and you look, the Chronicle amped it up a little bit too for their coverage. But again, I don't know if they dug deep into just past the games and past going to a World Cup game, how much are tickets, that type of deal. I don't get the sense it's going to continue after the World Cup.
Yeah, I agree
and
with
so
that.
again, that's
Yeah.
kind of where you feel like, okay, here we are, July 10th, and I mean, this is as good as it's going to get.
Maybe, but I'm still hopeful, Victor, to be honest with you, that more can happen and that we can build upon it. Friends, what do you think? If you're watching us, if you're listening to us in the Houston area, if you're soccer fans, is this enough? Is this that pivotal moment that we're going to be talking about in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years? And we're going to remember 2026 and the World Cup and how that changed everything. Now we have more parks, and now we have more players, and now we have 2 professional teams. I'm really pushing my luck there to see if we'd have. But you know what? There is talk, Victor, just between you and me, of having at least, as you know, the USL is going to have a men's first division. That Houston would be a market to have 2 men's professional teams, maybe 2 women's professional teams.
It probably should have happened already, but again, we'll see.
Yeah, we will definitely see. Victor, let's talk a little bit about tomorrow's matches as we focus back on the World Cup. How do you see these matches playing out in prediction time? Norway, England, to me, very intriguing. And I think Argentina, Switzerland, also intriguing in the sense of maybe an upset there if luck runs out for Messi and company. But your thoughts on these matches that will take place tomorrow, Saturday?
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I gotta think Argentina's going to find a way to keep going forward. All respect to Switzerland, but Colombia kind of gave that away. And again, I don't want to take away merit from Switzerland, but hey, this is their chance to show that they're not one of these European countries that are just another one of the bunch. And again, they might not get the accolades that England and Spain and France get because obviously they haven't achieved the same victories and obviously the same conquests as far as trophies. But this is an opportunity for Switzerland to show that it wasn't a fluke here against Colombia. Yeah. That it wasn't just because they got the penalties and were able to see him out. And what better than the defending champions? But I have to think Argentina's got to get it together at some point. And I think we may see a little bit of a different team than what we've been seeing. Certainly, in the terms of getting goals sooner in the game. England. I go back to it. I think they came off a very
confidence building, emotional match versus Mexico.
Emotional. A game that took a lot of energy. Going out of Mexico City. How do they rebound from that? Obviously they're going to have a player out due to suspension. But can they keep that going? I mean, is it? And it might be just a big confidence booster, and it might, I might be thinking of it as the wrong way, but I also think they got to be wary of Norway. They can't just, they got to come out there with a killer instinct, because if they let Norway hang around, Norway could get the better of them. And I think that's kind of what Norway's trying to. I mean, they're trying to play that part. They're not trying to be have any bravado and kind of Erling Haaland's playing it the way he plays it in the media as well. I mean, they're trying to give England their flowers. So, again, they don't ruffle any feathers. Again, basically the effect that we saw with Belgium against the United States. You don't want to anger the bull before you face it. I mean, so I think they're not trying to give England any more motivation. And again, a lot of people will be rooting for Norway. They certainly seem to be a team of destiny, and we'll see if they continue or if England is indeed the real deal.
And once we get through tomorrow's matches, friends, you'll have the two semifinals set, which, again, I can't believe we're so close now to the end, the conclusion of this tournament. Victor, no one's asked me, but I'm going to go with Norway and, yes, Argentina getting through, which, again, sets up a really, really interesting Norway-Argentina semifinal, and we've already got the France versus Spain. Yesterday, or tomorrow, I should say, Victor, talking about locally, Houston Dynamo at Shell Energy will be hosting, like I mentioned, Club Olimpia Deportivo from Honduras. That game starting at 6 o'clock. I'll be on the call in English. I believe we can catch that on the Houston Dynamo YouTube channel. So I look forward to those of you that are with us. These matches, this soccer celebration, Victor, I think it serves multiple purposes, correct? Preparing the team, in both teams, Olimpia preparing for their apertura in the Honduran First Division, and Houston Dynamo going back to MLS action starting as early as the 22nd, I believe, against DC United at Shell. So it serves purposes of preparing the teams, Victor, but it also serves as a way to see, hey, can we get people to continue having interest in the sport, even if it isn't World Cup quality, World Cup level matches?
Yeah, and certainly a big community in Houston that loves the sport in Honduras. And it's a tricky one because Honduras didn't make the World Cup. So, and certainly, Olimpia, I mean, how many of their diehard fans are going to come out for this game? That may be the majority. We're gonna see that how many Dynamo fans are going to come out for this preseason match as well. Is the ticket the right price for them to get in? Are they going to come out just to see a game in town? I think this game will certainly have people from Honduras following here and abroad. So there will be some conversation around it and new eyeballs for the Houston Dynamo. And again, that's why I think these type of games should probably happen every year, honestly, because of the amount of Hondurans that, live in Houston, Texas. I would extend that to Salvadoran teams. You have that maybe automatically if you're in the Leagues Cup with Mexico, but I would like to see more of this mix, and certainly because these are teams that play differently, challenge you in a different way than certainly the MLS teams do.
This is a series of matches, by the way. There was a behind closed doors match this past, I think it was Monday, Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. Wednesday versus Querétaro. And then on July 15th at Shell again, Houston taking on América de Cali, a team from Colombia, also preparing for the start of their season. So these are, again, friendlies, international friendlies, unlimited substitutions. But it really is, again, I think serving multiple purposes. One, getting your teams ready. And number two, locally, can the energy of what we've seen from the World Cup continue? So I'm curious, and I'll be there to see how both of these matches play along. Victor, if as you mentioned, you think there should be more matches like this, is it also a heavy load on the players? I mean, but is that what you need right now after a couple of weeks off? And how do you see the energy, Victor, not only for the Houston Dynamo, but for the MLS in general, continuing after the World Cup? How do you see the MLS being prepared also to cosechar? What is the word in English? Cosechar. To
till the soil, to grow.
Yeah, to grow, to benefit from the World Cup.
Yeah, look, I think they missed the boat on not doing more during the World Cup, and I'm talking, during the group stage, during when more of the conversation was hot. Because certainly now, we're in the latter stages. We're getting to the final matches, and again, certainly the people that were following the U.S. and Mexico, or some of them have tuned out, as not all of them, but I think there is a section of those casual fans that are, may not be following as closely as they would have on a daily basis. So, um, but we'll see. And listen, it's almost, and this is also why I say this, because it almost feels like all the marbles for MLS are in Argentina winning, because Messi's tied to it. Um, Rodrigo de Paul is part of the Argentina team as well. But I mean, obviously, Messi's the star of the league. And if you certainly want MLS to grow, I think you're if you're an MLS executive, you're hoping Argentina takes it, because Messi would not only get a second World Cup that etches him in the obviously conversation of the greatest of all time, and it maybe solidifies him. Again, depending on people's whoever what argument you do, but obviously that would give him more of a case. And then certainly doing it while being an active player of an MLS club, I think that's kind of the momentum MLS would need. And I think, again, they're probably banking on that to happen more so than, or I would hope they're at least banking on that to happen. But I mean, if it doesn't, if France wins or if another nation wins, then I don't know if that hurts it. I hope there will be people that come forward to MLS, but it wouldn't be, I don't think, the same effect as having that, recently crowned World Cup champion on your team.
Oh, that's huge.
Which is why I think more should have probably been done here. But maybe they've been saving the resources, and maybe they have a better plan, and maybe they'll shut me up. So we'll see.
Yeah, many people would like to do that, Victor, to be honest with you. No, I'm just kidding.
I welcome it.
No. Look, I love your point of view. I love your perspective. We may not agree on everything all the time, and that's part of the conversation. But you come at it from a point of view, first of all, of care, second, of objectivity, and third, with knowledge. So I don't think you're like many other voices that are just kind of making it up. Victor, before we go, let's talk about the coverage in Telemundo versus Fox, media coverage in general, as we kind of wrap up for today and get ready for two more quarterfinal matches tomorrow. What are you seeing from the media coverage? I know we're already talking about what's going to happen after, but we still have a couple of games left. Are you enjoying it still? And are you seeing that the coverage, whether it's English or Spanish, is helping the sport?
It's difficult, because I think, the World Cup's so big that people would watch it regardless of who's commentating, or I would even say what network is on, right? So you kind of have to separate those two. I think, again, I would hope that it's helping some of the casuals, if you're watching Fox or Telemundo, learn more about these teams and kind of follow these teams a little more, or learn more about the sport. But again, as far as the mainstream media as a whole, I don't know if that's necessarily growing the game. I think there's a lot of conversations, certainly, because everybody has their opinion of why the U.S. didn't make it further in the tournament.
Sure.
But again, are we having the right conversations, or are we just kind of yelling Victor, to be heard?
Yeah, I'm going to cut you off, and I apologize to you, sir. What I sense is a lot of bitterness, and certainly the Spanish language coverage. It's like, man, I mean, and I you and I have talked about this for years, Victor, that the coverage that soccer gets in this country and in this city compared to the coverage in most every other nation of the planet is almost too nice, right? Way too respectful. They don't follow the coach to their house and ask him for comment. They're already all over Rafa Marquez, who literally was just named, I believe, the head coach of
there's some controversy over that, because they feel Marquez should have given him the time of day at the airport when they went and put a microphone in his face, and I disagree with that type of
Well, it's an
I think you can go to the It is, but it's also people trying to. It's no different than maybe in any other sport, like it or not, or in entertainment. I mean, there's a sector of the media that's going to do it just to get clicks, or that's trying to get a story. Um, Certainly in like Latin America, a lot of these reporters, I mean, they have to come back with a story or they don't get paid. So that's partly the nature of the business too. We don't really have that here. We don't even probably here we don't even have people sometimes getting paid for soccer coverage. It's more of out of the level of the game. So it just kind of tells you where it's night and day between,
Yeah.
at least between the U.S. and Mexico. But
And,
yeah,
and where I'm going with it, Victor, is that because of the higher profile potentially of the sport, because of the World Cup, that's going to require, I think, logically, if media outlets are going to dedicate time and energy to it, a greater level of scrutiny. You and I talk about this all the time, how for the Houston Astros, let's localize it, there are channels that go down for spring training that are down there for weeks. And every day there's a report on everything, on injuries, on where the manager parked, or whether or not the manager made a decision about a trade. Are we ready for that level of scrutiny, Victor? And on the media side, is the sport ready to tolerate that? Because it's going to change. Some players here in the MLS, they can literally walk through a stadium. Nobody knows who they are, and they're world stars. They're superstars in their country. Their level of anonymity is almost shocking, and the media here aren't hounding them in many ways. That may be another change that this World Cup leaves, not necessarily a positive one.
yeah, I don't think it will, because unless it's, I mean, I don't think it will. I don't think it'll change. I think because even during the World Cup, I mean, you turn on radio, sports radio, and I mean, some programs might be talking about it, but the majority isn't talking about soccer.
Sure.
I think a lot of the talking on TV has been more about what is the World Cup doing locally for restaurants, for the economy. There's been some coverage, obviously, of the teams. There's been a few color stories with the marches and that kind of stuff. But farther than that, I mean, I don't know if anybody's necessarily going to the Dynamo and Dash to further look into the sport. I've seen a report here or there, like Channel 2 in one of the Dynamo trainings. But again, I don't know if it's going to be a constant coverage. I unfortunately I don't see much changing, and that's why it always goes back to the powers that be, the people that hold the control of sport in our city, but also in our country, to drive the conversation, drive more talk behind the sport, and intelligent talk where it grows the game, and not just hounding Christian Pulisic, which again I think naturally you'll have that in sports after a game, but again, everybody goes to the easy, pay to play. Nobody's giving any solutions of how we're going to develop the next best players, or if we're even developing them now. I mean, nobody dives deeper than that. It's just it's all cheap talk.
You know what's shocking? Yeah, and forgive me again, Victor, and you can slap me next time you see me in person for the interruptions. Pay to play, I think we should have a whole show about pay to play. I have strong opinions in many ways, as I wear the many hats that I wear as leader of a youth club that is lumped into the pay to play system. I'm happy to defend it relative to what else is the alternative. Who else is going to have fields? Who else is going to pay for coaches? Unless there's a bunch of people that have A licenses that are ready to work for free at facilities that suddenly appear out of nowhere, and every child can play for free. Other than this World Cup Legacy program, which is at its infancy, I don't see anyone else going out there and saying, you know what, I'm going to work this full time, not get paid for it, and I've got 100 fields that are ready to give kids free soccer. Whoever wants and can do that, I applaud them to do that. But no one's stepping up here, or in Dallas, or in New York, or in Oklahoma City, or in California. It isn't happening. So even professional players, Victor, that criticize pay to play, Landon Donovan, it's great. We can criticize this easy. Landon, what is the solution? Are you going to donate millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to include kids? Or are you going to find the group that's going to do that? Whoever does that is going to do it as a business or philanthropy. Philanthropy reaches its level, but as a business, you've got to get return on your investment.
Or are you going to run for election with U.S. Soccer?
Correct.
And but there's no, and also we haven't really heard of the powers that be at U.S. Soccer after this World Cup, and we'll see if we ever, or when we do, what they get asked,
Sure.
because that's the other side of this is what do they think? What are they doing? What's their plan? And all these things. Again, will we have that coverage, or is it just going to be a few outlets that get access, or that have the resources to go wherever the press conference is, what have you?
And
we'll see.
regurgitate the message that the entity wants to get across, versus having someone that has a little bit of knowledge and background and maybe can ask a contrarian question, which is, okay, that's a great idea. I'm glad you're doing this, but what about this? And that's where I really believe on the media coverage, Victor, the sport can grow. But part of that growth is going to mean, I think, a little more scrutiny, number one, and also a little more questioning of how things are done and who is behind it. Which again, if the system can tolerate that, I think it can improve by that scrutiny. Victor, we've got to go. I know we've talked a little bit about your picks for tomorrow, another exciting day building, and then some days off before we get the semifinals, and then we're already talking about a World Cup final. But a last word, Victor, as we say buenas noches for tonight.
Yeah, I think interesting. Probably maybe the two most interesting quarterfinal games out of the four. And obviously we've already seen two, so we know how those ended up. But I think just the clashing storylines between some of these teams, and certainly it falls on a Saturday. We know people are going to be glued to the TV, and it's going to be much watched soccer.
It definitely will be. Victor, you're amazing. It's always great to be beside you. We appreciate your time, your knowledge, your passion when it comes to this sport, and everything else that you do. So it's an honor always to be with you. Friends, we've got to go, but thanks to our production team, thanks to Katie, thanks to Grant, thanks to Enrique, who have been part and continue as part of this Live at Night Soccer Talk. So on behalf of Victor, I'm Alex Parra. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Friday. Enjoy the weekend and enjoy two more very interesting matches coming up tomorrow. We'll be back on the air following, talking, and certainly we want your opinions as well. Friends, have a great evening. Muy buenas noches.